Welcome back to Cinema Wellman. I'm your host, David. Today's episode is a beginner's guide to cult movies. You may have heard the phrase. You may be confused by the phrase or the term cult movies. Are people in hoods and robes and surrounded by pentagrams watching their favorite films? Well, in some cases, kind of. We're going to look at them today, and we're going to showcase 20 different films that are considered cult films. And first thing we want to do is nail down a definition. And if we're going to talk about cult films, we have to land on what we're talking about here. So I think that if you asked 10 different movie fans, what's your definition of a cult film, you might get 10 different answers. So when in doubt, I always like to go to the experts. And when it comes to cult films, I go to first Danny Peary. Danny Peary is the author of 3 of the cult movie books that I own. And I'm going to read you a quote by Danny Peary. And he writes that cult movies are, quote, special films which for one reason or another have been taken to heart by segments of the movie audience, cherished, protected, and most of all, enthusiastically championed. Cultists don't merely enjoy their favorite films, they worship them. Seek them out whenever they are playing, catch them in theaters, even when they have just played on television, see them repeatedly, and are intent on persuading anyone who will listen that they should be appreciated, regardless of what the reviewers thought. Now, Peary goes on to explain that the typical Hollywood movie today has little potential for becoming a cult favorite later on because, according to Peary, it's perceived by everyone basically in the same way, where these cult films that we look at, they were, quote, born in controversy, in arguments over quality, themes, talent, and other matters. Another expert I look to is an author, Jennifer Ice, and Jennifer put together this book, 500 Essential Cult Movies, The Ultimate Guide. And what Jennifer writes about cult films follows, quote, calling a movie cult can often be considered an insult, but not all cult films are of low quality or unloved. And she goes on with, and this is important, on the other hand, some of them are just fun to watch over and over because they are mind-bendingly terrible. And Ice did land on this definition. Quote, a cult film is one that inspires an almost unhealthy level of devotion in its fans. That adjective, unhealthy, I think that's fantastic. Ice is not here in her book. She's not there to judge anything, anybody, any of these movies, any of the fans of these movies. The aim of her book was to introduce well-loved and perhaps little-known gems to a wider audience for appreciation. And that's really what I'm trying to do with this podcast, with this episode of Cinema Wellman. Keep in mind, not all cult movies are low-budget, independent films. As a matter of fact, I'm going to read you a list, and these are films that you will recognize all of them, and you will recognize them as classics, and you might be surprised that they are also considered by many to be cult films for one reason or another. I'm talking about films like All About Eve, Casablanca, Citizen Kane, The Maltese Falcon, Sunset Boulevard, Jaws. All considered to be cult films in some way or another. Today, we're going to look at 20 films. The first 5 that I'm going to talk about are not my cup of tea. I don't like them, but I'm not saying that they're bad. I didn't like them. But with cult movies, not liking it doesn't mean it's bad. It's just it wasn't for you. And that's important to keep in mind when you're talking about cult movies. The other 15 movies that I'm going to talk about today, I am pretty much a card-carrying cult member for all of them. I want to let you know where I got the list. So I watched recently on Peacock a 3-part docuseries that was titled Time Warp, The Greatest Cult Films of All Time. And it was a 3-part series, and it featured a total of 46 cult movies. So I used their list of 46 to compile my list of 20 that I wanted to talk to you about today. The miniseries was great. You could find it if you get Peacock. I think it's fantastic, especially if you're new to the world of cult movies. And again, it's called Time Warp, and that has significance to and a connection to the first film that I'm actually going to talk about. So if you're ready, let's do that Time Warp. We're going to begin again with those 5 cult films that I'm not a fan of, but if you're interested in cult films, you have to go here, or else you're not. Well, I like cult films, but I never saw this. No, then you're not going to. No one's going to listen to you. No one's going to take you seriously. So what we're going to start with is what many consider to be the cult film. Now, what I'm going to do is, before I tell you what the title of the film is, I'm going to read to you the IMDb synopsis. And in some cases, it's going to give it away because of some things that they mentioned. And in other times, I'd like you to think maybe it'll ring a bell to you. So here we go. Here's the first one. A newly engaged couple have a breakdown in an isolated area and must seek shelter at the bizarre residence of Dr. Frankenfurter. And this is, and that might have rang a bell to some of you, this is the Rocky Horror Picture Show from 1975. And all you need to know about this film being considered the queen of all cult movies, I will tell you this. There's a theater in Portland, Oregon that has played this film nightly for 43 straight years. During COVID, during the shutdown, they continued playing it to an empty theater for a full year. That's love. That's devotion. And that's a cult film. That's what we're talking. The thing about Rocky Horror is that you don't just watch it, it's an experience. For it to work, you need the full effect of the people who love it so much, the people who belong to that cult. You need to see it with them. I think the reason why this is on that list of 5 and not the later list of 15, the cult movies that I love, is because I never got to see Rocky Horror in a theater. And if you want to see it, seek it out. It's playing near you. I can almost guarantee that you can find it, and go to a screening if you're interested, and go with friends and look up on the interwebs. There are websites devoted to the props, because you have to come in you need props, and the people all know the lines, and they sing and they dance and they throw stuff at the screen, and it's an audience participation kind of thing. So if you're interested in Rocky Horror Picture Show, and it is a crazy, crazy movie, and it is a lot of fun. Like I said, the only reason why it didn't really hit home with me is because I did not see it with the cult. I saw it on my own, and it didn't quite work. Next, here's the IMDb for the next film. Henry Spencer tries to survive his industrial environment, his angry girlfriend, and the unbearable screams of his newly born mutant child. Yay! This is a Disney... No, it's not Disney. This is Eraserhead from 1977. And I will be the first one to admit that I didn't get it. I didn't get this at all. This is some dark, dismal, bizarre content here. Very bleak, and it's surreal, and it's yucky. For the lack of a better word, it's kind of yucky. So I remember hearing how great this was, how important it was, and how you need to see it. If you're a film person, you need to see it. And I saw it, and I kind of hated it. I didn't get it. I felt stupid for not getting it. The director's David Lynch, and David Lynch is an acquired taste. And I like his work. I don't like all of it, and I certainly didn't like this one. But as I've said earlier, and as I'm going to repeat later on, if you want to get into cult films, if you want to start, seeing a bunch of them, you have to see Eraserhead. You just have to, because it is considered one of the cult films. Next, here is the next synopsis. Notorious Baltimore criminal and underground figure Divine, that might be a giveaway for some of you, goes up against a sleazy married couple who make a passionate attempt to humiliate her and seize her tabloid-given title as the filthiest person alive. So, the movie poster there. Check out the quotes on the movie poster. These are the reviews. These are the notes. Quote, one of the most vile, stupid, and repulsive films ever made. Here's another one. Like a septic tank explosion, it has to be seen to be believed. And I love both of those reviews. They kind of fit this. Now, a lot of this movie is gross, and it's supposed to be gross. But I sometimes have an issue with movies that are trying to be weird, trying to be gross, trying to be raunchy. And it doesn't work. It's obvious, and it shows up that way. Now, that's the way this film came across to me. And this, again, this is John Waters' Pink Flamingos from 1972. If you've ever heard about this film, I bet you it's because of something that happens at the end of the film. The star of the film, Divine, eats dog poop, fresh out of the dog. No camera tricks, no props or anything. This was, that's quite unappealing. Even hearing me say it, you might go, but watching it, yeah, it was a little too much. The next one, here we go. Here's the synopsis. A listless and alienated teenager tries to help his new friend win the class presidency in their small Western high school while he must deal with his bizarre family life back home. This is from 2004, Napoleon Dynamite. And again, I don't know what was going on in 2004, but it seemed like everyone thought this movie was fantastic. Everybody was talking about Napoleon Dynamite, how quirky it was, how cool it was, how smart it was, and funny. I saw it and I didn't like any of it. And I've mentioned before that one of the key things for me, and I don't know if anybody else is like this, but if I can't find a character in the film that I like, even one of them, it's a lost cause for me. And I hated everybody in this movie. I missed it. And that happens. If you're going to watch movies, you're not going to understand them all. Some of them are going to go over your head. Some of them, as simplistic as Napoleon Dynamite, I can honestly say I didn't get it. All right, let's move on. Here's the synopsis. A star bowler whose career was prematurely cut off hopes to ride a new prodigy to success and riches. This is 1996's bowling comedy Kingpin. And this is another cult film that gets a lot of love for, I just found it to be stupid in so many ways. Another film where I didn't connect with any of the characters and I didn't like any of the characters. I had nobody to root for. This was the movie poster promised that this was going to be up my alley, and it was not. You might like Woody Harrelson and Randy Quaid more than I do. And again, watch these. I'm not here to judge, and I'm not here to debate you, Jerry. You might love Eraserhead if you see it, and that's fantastic. That's what movies are for. All right, let's move on. Here we go. Here are the 15. So those are the 5. So we got Rocky Horror Picture Show, Eraserhead, Pink Flamingos, Napoleon Dynamite, and Kingpin. That I would say if you want to broaden your horizons and see cult movies or get into cult movies, you must see. Well, at least, if you want me to narrow it down for you, you at least need to see Rocky Horror, Eraserhead, and Pink Flamingos. You can let Napoleon Dynamite and Kingpin go, in my opinion. But if you want to see any of those, see those 3. And you might agree, you might disagree. Let's move on. Here we go. Here is the, and these are in alphabetical order because I couldn't really figure out any other way to do it. Here's the first synopsis. Now this one's going to be a giveaway because it's mentioned in the synopsis, but here we go. Adventurer, brain surgeon, rock musician Buckaroo Banzai and his crime-fighting team, the Hong Kong Cavaliers, must stop evil alien invaders from the 8th dimension who are planning to conquer Earth. This is 1984's The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai Across the 8th Dimension. And Peter Weller is Buckaroo Banzai. I love Peter Weller. I don't think he worked enough. Jeff Goldblum, who I think works too much, he's in it. Lewis Smith plays Perfect Tommy Pepe Cerna, who I loved in Car Wash so many years ago. He plays Reno, Nevada. Those are members of Buckaroo's band. And they're scientists and they're physicists and they're in a band and he's a doctor, and it's lunacy. Ellen Barkin is here. She plays Penny Pretty. And John Lithgow has a dual role as Dr. Emilio Lizardo and Lord John Wharfen. And he steals the show. It's enough to make the ganglia twitch. It's so funny. This is such a weird movie. Some of it doesn't make any sense, and a lot of it is just so much fun to watch. Like a lot of these films, just reading about them again and putting together the blog, writing about them, I really want to see them again. And here's the next one. Here's the synopsis. An unlikely partnership between a highway patrol officer, two criminals, and a station secretary is formed to defend a defunct Los Angeles precinct office against a siege by bloodthirsty street gang. That's from 1976. And if you're not familiar with Assault on Precinct 13, this is fantastic. Directed by John Carpenter, who did Halloween, Escape from New York, The Thing, Big Trouble in Little China. This is a gritty action crime thriller that has the feelings of a horror movie. These, the secretary and the one police officer and this one bad guy are like trapped, and this street gang shows up out of nowhere, and there's no one that's going to come to help them, and it's a siege thing. And again, it reminded me of kind of like a horror movie, a zombie movie, where the zombies seem to have little or no plan, and they don't speak, and they seem to be inhuman, and they're just wandering around, and they just show up, they attack and attack and attack, and this was really good. I have a funny memory of this. This was featured on the 4:30 movie, and when they were going to show Assault on Precinct 13, I was in every time. So I watched it every time it was on the 4:30 movie. So I'm watching it one day on the 4:30 movie, and again, the 4:30 movies, it's an afternoon. It's in the afternoon. It's network TV. So they were edited. So the violence and the any sex, any violence, any language was trimmed out of it. That's just the way it was. But one day the censors must have been asleep at the switch, because I'm watching it, and then all of a sudden, the word asshole sneaks through. And I was like, whoa, wait, what happened there? What am I watching here? And it was funny because you never heard swearing on TV. This is before anybody had cable where they showed uncut films. I mean, just didn't hear swear words coming out of your TV. In any event, this is an exceptional thriller. It's a little known cast. The musical score is great. Carpenter did it himself, as he likes to do. This is a dandy, and again, it's something that I want to watch right now. But let's move on. Here's number 3 on the list, and again, they're not in any particular order. Here's the IMDb. Ultimate LA slacker Jeff, the Dude Lebowski, mistaken for a millionaire of the same name, seeks restitution for a rug ruined by debt collectors, enlisting his bowling buddies for help while trying to find the millionaire's missing wife. So if you've paid any attention to anything that is Cinema Wellman, you know that I am a card-carrying cult member of the cult of Big Lebowski. It might not be a sports film, but it is a cult film. And one of the prerequisites, it seems, of being a cult film is either poor box office or a poor showing by in the eyes of the reviewers. And I always think it's funny that when the Coen, Big Lebowski is directed by, written and directed by the Coen brothers, and I love the Coen brothers, and I love that the Coen brothers are very honest in their interviews, and I remember them saying in more than a couple of interviews that I've seen that they were like, this is nothing against our fans or anything, but we don't really care if you like the movies that we make, because they make them for themselves. I always thought that was very cool. That's very, you might like it, you might not like it, you might like it, but we liked it. And when the Coens are asked about, what surprises you most about the films you've made, they always say that it's how popular The Big Lebowski became. They were stunned by that. They loved it, but they were shocked that it got the following that it got. The cast: Philip Seymour Hoffman, John Turturro plays Jesus, not that Jesus. John Polito, the late great John Polito, and new friend of Cinema Wellman, Tara Reid, is in it as a Bunny Lebowski. This is there are so many lines from this. This has just permeated my everyday speech. There's almost something Big Lebowski in every room in the house, and obviously, as you can see in the studio, it's all over the place here. What do you got here? You got nihilists, you got girls without toes, you got carpet pissers in this one, and Julianne Moore is Maude Lebowski, and Maude Lebowski is amazing. So mix up a White Russian, smoke it if you got them, sit back and enjoy the Lebowski experience, and you'll be saying to yourself, You think the carpet pissers did this? All right, let's move on. Film from 1982 that's going to be given away by the synopsis. A Blade Runner must pursue and terminate replicants who stole a ship in space and have returned to Earth to find their creator. And this is Blade Runner, Ridley Scott's Blade Runner from 1982. This is one of the most visually stunning films you'll ever see. And I know that the special effects game has changed drastically since 1982, but this is visually so pleasing and stunning to see, even by today's standards, in my opinion. So Harrison Ford plays Deckard. Deckard's one of those Blade Runners mentioned in the synopsis. His job's to find and eliminate these replicants or robots who are up to no good. Deckard ends up on a journey that ultimately leads to a grim discovery. Ridley Scott's very comfortable with this genre. He directed Alien. He likes the science fiction. He's very good at it. It's futuristic film noir, and it even features a voiceover narration by Deckard that in the original version that they took out in the later version, and in the director's cut it doesn't exist either. So if you want to see Blade Runner, if you haven't seen Blade Runner, see the original with the voiceover, and then seek out another version of it that doesn't have the voiceover. And I think that you're going to prefer the one that doesn't have the voiceover. This film, like many on this list, features a deep cast. Rutger Hauer, Sean Young, Edward James Olmos, Daryl Hannah, M. Emmett Walsh, all wonderful sci-fi thriller that will have you questioning so many things, possibly including your own existence. While you're at it, read the source material. It's Philip K. Dick's Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? Always worthwhile to read the source material, if possible, when you're going to watch a movie. Let's move on to the next cult movie on our list. Here's the IMDb. A day in the lives of two convenience clerks named Dante and Randall as they annoy customers, discuss movies, and play hockey on the store roof. This is from 1994, and this is Kevin Smith's Clerks. And as the poster reads, just because they serve you doesn't mean they like you. And tell you a couple things about Clerks. If you're sensitive to salty language, Clerks may not be for you. The F word and its derivatives show up 91 times in a 92-minute movie, and it is far from the only profanity in the movie. It's the first, and many say best, offering from director Kevin Smith, and it's hysterical. It's a look at what it's actually... It takes a look at what it's actually like to be a clerk and work in these convenience stores. One works in a convenience store, one works in a video store, and it's really not about too much, and yet it's really, really funny. The characters are fantastic. My two favorite characters, Jason Mewes and Kevin Smith himself as Jay and Silent Bob. They're the weed-dealing slackers that hang out outside the Quick Stop. Little cool background, the Kevin Smith actually worked in the store in which this was filmed. So they would shoot all night, and then at 6 a.m. he'd open the store and work his shift. That kind of stuff, that's how cult films are made, I think. All right, let's move on. Next one, here's the IMDb. A group of Southern California high school students are enjoying their most important subjects: sex, drugs, and rock and roll. This is Amy Heckerling's 1982 film, Fast Times at Ridgemont High. I have to talk about the cast of this film. When this was made, this was amazing. In 82, when this was made, we have Sean Penn at 22 years old. This was his second movie. Friend of cinema Wellman, Jennifer Jason Leigh, she was 20. This was her third movie. Forrest Whitaker was 21. This was his second movie. Judge Reinhold was 25. This was his fourth movie. Phoebe Cates was 19, and this was her second movie. And Eric Stoltz was 21, and this is Eric Stoltz's very first movie. And they went on, all of them went on to be accomplished actors and actresses, and in movies and TV, and it's just really fun to watch them all come together with this great script. And under the helm of Amy Heckerling, who was only 28 when she directed this, and the screenplay was written by a 25-year-old Cameron Crowe. This was a very young production, and and it shows because it's just so much fun. This is unbelievably fun and a good time. Ray Walston, Mr. Hand, and Sean Penn is Spicoli. This is fantastic. This is so good. All right, let's move on. Here's the next one. IMDb says a voluptuous black vigilante takes a job as a high-class prostitute to get revenge on the mobsters who murdered her boyfriend. This is 1974's Foxy Brown. The poster reads, "Don't mess around with Foxy Brown. She's the meanest chick in town." Why don't we get posters like that anymore? That is gold. That's fantastic. Now, Pam Grier, friend of Cinema Wellman, Pam Grier, is phenomenal. She's wonderful, and she's still working, which I love. But back in the 70s, Pam Grier made a bunch of films that fall under the genre of blaxploitation. Now, Foxy Brown was made in 74, so it fits under that category. Blaxploitation, the phrase was coined about 3 years before the release of this film, and it referred to films that belonged to an ethnic subgenre of the exploitation film genre. So think gritty stuff, grindhouse kind of stuff, violent sex, violence, and all that stuff, and mean bad guys, and it was very, very good, but over the top, like a lot of action. The terms of portmanteau that combines the words black and exploitation, which always confused me because when I hear exploitation, I think that's negative. And when you see movies that fit in this genre, this blaxploitation genre, these are films that were made by black people for black people, starring black people. There's no exploitation going on here at all. It was a genre that allowed a large percentage of our population to see themselves on screen for a change. If you're white, you take that for granted. Most movies you've ever seen have white protagonists, especially when we go back. Let's go back. Let's be honest about films. And if you're a person of color, it has to be empowering to see people like you on the big screen. And that's what this genre did. And Foxy Brown is great, and Coffee is great. One of the things that I love about these films in this genre was the fact that the bad guy in all of them is whitey. And I thought that was fantastic because it was true and because it was good to see that for a change, being a white kid. Well, we are the bad guys sometimes, and the older I got, the more I learned that. Let's move on to another film, though. And Foxy Brown, also the blaxploitation films were famous for not only their action, but their soundtrack, filled with lots of urban kind of funk and jazz and stuff like that. That was new to a lot of film goers. All right, let's move on to the next one. Here is IMDb. A circus's beautiful trapeze artist agrees to marry the leader of a group of sideshow performers, but his deformed friends discover she is only marrying him for his inheritance. This is 1932's Freaks. 1932, directed by Todd Browning. When I first thought of this topic for a potential episode, I knew that I was going to have to include Todd Browning's Freaks. I just knew. And I remembered thinking to myself, how the hell am I going to talk about Freaks? And this is months later, and I'm still not sure. I've got that same thought. This is a movie about carnivals and about carnies. So let that sink in for a minute. And then think about a movie about carnivals and carnies that was made in 1932. This always reminds me of reading the stories of Edgar Allan Poe in my classroom with my 8th graders, and they would freak out. And I said, yeah, think about reading this stuff before the Civil War. Yeah, Yeah, it's different. So carnivals and carnies are terrifying. We can agree on that. And that's what makes this movie so appealing. Do you want to look behind that curtain or don't you? Because if you do, director Todd Browning is just pulling that curtain right aside, and here it is. And this ending, this is unsettling from the start. And the ending of this film it will give you night sweats. That's a dandy. That's Freaks from 1932. Next, this one will be given away by IMDb in the synopsis. King Arthur and his Knights of the Round Table embark on a surreal, low-budget search for the Holy Grail, encountering many very silly obstacles. 1975's Monty Python and the Holy Grail. I was a Monty Python fan from a very young age. I remember being in 7th grade and 8th grade, staying up Sunday nights, wait until 10:30 to watch it on PBS. The same people that gave us Sesame Street also gave us Sunday nights with Monty Python. And, you watch and you devour, you absorb those episodes. And the next day with my friend Donnie in the parking lot of Sacred Heart School, we already had memorized some of the lines. This was great. And then there was a movie. The movie is going to come out. They're going to make a Monty Python movie. We were all aboard. It was exactly the right time for me to be exposed to Monty Python and National Lampoon, for that matter. This stuff was as subversive as I could get, living under the same roof as my mother. The movie's fantastic. Any Monty Python fan worth their salt can quote the aggressive the guard at the castle, the French guard at the castle. I mean, every single word. Mostly Python fans know every single word in this entire film. Monty Python and the Holy Grail, just wonderful. I feel like watching it right now. I keep saying that. Next, let's take a look at a ragtag group of Pennsylvanians barricade themselves in an old farmhouse to remain safe from a horde of flesh-eating ghouls that are ravaging the East Coast of the United States. This is from 1968, and this is George Romero's Night of the Living Dead. Now, in 2022, we're kind of inundated. We've been inundated with zombies for the past 20 years, I think. You owe yourself to see where it began. George A. Romero did it first, I think, and he did it best, I think. This is great stuff. It's scary. It's grisly. It's nasty. It's one of those what would I do movies. And a little tidbit for you. The human flesh that the zombies are eating during this film and it's black and white film. It's actually ham that is slathered with chocolate syrup. We know that chocolate syrup makes the best blood in a black and white film. Alfred Hitchcock told us that in Psycho. Next, here we go. Evil aliens attack Earth and set their terrible Plan 9 into action. As the aliens resurrect the dead of the Earth, the lives of the living are in danger. This is 1959's Plan 9 from Outer Space. And this is made by Ed Wood. Remember I read you the quote from Jennifer Ice that she says, on the other hand, some of them are just fun to watch over and over because they're mind-bendingly terrible. That's Plan 9 from Outer Space. This got a 3.9 rating on IMDb, and it's the lowest rating of these films that we're going to talk about today. Only one film is lower, and that one's coming up. I love Plan 9, even though it's bad. I loved Ed Wood, the director, for being who he was and having the courage to be who he was and do his thing. But this movie's really bad. But it's one of those fun awfuls. It's one of those I could watch this over and over awfuls. You know the old joke about this science fiction movie so bad you could see the wires holding the paper plate flying saucers? That's this movie. That's what it is. It's so bad that it's so good. You have to also watch Ed Wood. Ed Wood was made in 1994. It stars Johnny Depp as the director Ed Wood, and most of this film is about the making of Plan 9 from Outer Space. So I would watch Ed Wood and then watch Plan 9 from Outer Space. It'll get you a nice kind of inside knowledge of that film. I've done that double feature quite a few times. It's a lot of fun. Ed Wood won an Oscar for Best Makeup, and Martin Landau won a Best Supporting Actor for playing screen legend Bela Lugosi in that. All right, let's move on. We've got a few to go here. IMDb. An FBI agent goes undercover to catch a gang of surfers who may be bank robbers. Well, you probably recognize that one. From 1991, it's Point Break. This is just an overdose of testosterone and coppertone. Keanu is Keanu. Swayze is Swayze. Busey is Busey. I think that's all you need to know. Other than the poster brags 100% pure adrenaline, but it's really 100% pure preposterous bullshit. And it's also awesome. Directed by, it's funny that this pile of testosterone was directed by Catherine Bigelow. And she went on to win a Best Director Oscar for The Hurt Locker in 2008. Even though Point Break's kind of fluffy, silly, you could see that Bigelow was extremely talented and there were good things ahead of her. She's a very talented director. So, Point Break, grab a couple of meatball sandwiches and ride the couch while Johnny Utah and Bodie ride the waves out there. The next one, what do we have? We have 3 left. Here we go. Thank you for sticking with me here. Here we go. Cautionary Tale features a fictionalized take on the use of marijuana. A trio of drug dealers lead innocent teenagers to become addicted to reefer cigarettes by holding wild parties with jazz music. This is from 1938, and it is reefer madness. As far as propaganda films go, and that's what this is the funniest one that you will ever see. The original title was Tell Your Children, and both are just funny. That or Reefer Madness, take your pick. Here are some quotes from the various posters of the time for Reefer Madness. Women cry for it, men die for it. The love weed. Dope created ecstasy avalanching into frightful perversions. Makes beasts of men and women. The truth about marijuana parties. Takes you through hell, the torturer that never stops. Sin, degradation, vice, insanity. This is 66 minutes of just madness. The best part is it takes literally one puff of the devil's weed to turn these young people and make them participate in these exaggerated acts of violence and sexual perversion. My favorite, and he's the poster boy for this whole thing, my favorite is the guy who takes one puff off a jazz cigarette and he starts giggling hysterically, and he appears as if he's ingested a pound of cocaine. It's so. This is the other lowest one on the list, 3.7. And it's another one so bad, so good. It's so fun. And it's a cult movie. I blame the jazz music those kids are listening to while they smoke those jazz cigarettes. This is another one like Rocky Horror Show, a picture show that I wish I saw at a midnight showing, but I kind of recreated the midnight show myself. So sit there in the haze and enjoy a little reefer madness. Here we go. We got 2 to go. IMDb. This one's a beaut. Nomi, a young drifter, arrives in Las Vegas to become a dancer and soon sets about clawing and pushing her way to become the top of the Vegas showgirls. That's right. Yeah, this is Showgirls. And once again, we're going to look at the poster. These are quotes. Just plain awful. A bad film, borderline inept, with an anti-erotic toxic charge about it. It deserved all the mean things people said about it. End quote. And then a reviewer added, perhaps the worst movie of the year. Phenomenal notes. Thank you so much. All are very true. This is the third lowest rated film on this, and it got a 5.0, which is surprising. But it needs to be seen because it's so stunningly bad. This is it's unbelievably messy, and it's offensive, and it's directed by Paul Verhoeven, and it stars Saved by the Bell escapee Elizabeth Berkley as Nomi Malone, and it pretty much ruined her career. I hate to say that, but it's true. She seems to have gotten past it if you see interviews with her and things like that, but this destroyed her. That's how bad this film was. I don't really want to line up and see this one again, but maybe I'll douse myself in glitter and give it another look one of these days. And here we go. Here's the last one. And it's from 1984. And IMDb gives it away right away. But here it is. Spinal Tap, one of England's loudest bands, is chronicled by film director Marty DeBurgi on what proves to be a fateful tour. And again, this is 1984. This is Spinal Tap. And my love for this film goes to 11. And if you know Spinal Tap, you know what I'm talking about. I saw this more than once, more than a few times in the theater as a senior at BU. It's one of the most rewatchable movies in film history in my mind. Rob Reiner got together with Michael McKean, Christopher Guest, Harry Shearer. The guys played their own instruments, and sounded very convincing, which either is a testament to how talented they are as musicians or how easy it is to play heavy metal music and write those ridiculous lyrics. It's a mockumentary. And some people saw it and thought it was a real band. That's how well done it is. So many real metal musicians saw it, or musicians of all types saw it and saw themselves. Oh my God, that happened to us. Oh yeah, that reminds us of that happened to, were they watching us? We had that same conversation. So it's something that is not only really funny, it's spot on accurate in portraying the lifestyle and the life and the events of what it's like being in a big metal band. It's just unbelievable. There's a scene in Graceland where the guys are paying their respects to Elvis Presley at his gravesite, and they start doing an a cappella version of Heartbreak Hotel. And then every time I watch Spinal Tap, I film that on my phone and I send it to my friend John, because we laugh about that all the time. But we should be in the same key, right? Well, that sounds raga. Well, that sounds too raga. We just laugh it over and over and over. And there are people hiding in the cast of this that you'll be like, wait, was that Billy Crystal? Yeah, that was Billy Crystal. You know, what is that? Fran Drescher from The Nanny? Yeah, that's Fran Drescher. And it's just so many people, so many good people. And I was so pleased to read recently that they are going to do a sequel. And it's everybody. McKean, Shearer, and Guest, and Rob Reiner's going to direct, and they're writing it and everything. And I just can't wait for that, because this is one of those cult movies that is just like ingrained itself into my vocabulary. There's things that I throw out. Tap. It's Spinal Tap. It's stuff like that solidifies your status in the realm of the cult movie when fans of your movie know pretty much the whole script by heart. So that's it. We're wrapping that up right there. That's it for our beginner's guide to cult movies. Hope you heard about something that you haven't seen that you are going to see now. And if you want to open up ideas of what other cult movies you should see, highly recommend picking up this book by Jennifer Ice, 500 Essential Cult Movies, The Ultimate Guide. Also, not a bad idea to seek out Danny Peary's Cult Movies 1, 2, and 3. If you have a favorite cult movie, post it. Shout it out to us at Cinema Wellman on the Instagram or the Twitter, or send an email at cinemawellman@gmail.com, and I'll read out those, and we'll talk about other people's favorite cult movies. It's not the last time we're going to talk about cult movies. One of the episodes that's planned for early 2023 is going to be about other cult movies that are favorites of mine that weren't in that special, The Time Warp, that was on Peacock. So that's it for now. The next episode for us is going to be the Halloween episode, where we're going to break down the top 10 and bottom 5 Stephen King movie adaptations. And that's it. Until then, take care.